Okay, welcome Tim and welcome Charles. And thank you to everyone that has taken the time out of their night to join in on this live chat. So tonight we're going to talk about something that has became a little bit concerning, the yellow-legged hornet. It first showed up here in Georgia back in 2023, and well, somehow it's still here 2 years later. It has now been spotted in South Carolina. Meanwhile, in Washington State, when they had like a similar hornet problem with the murder hornet, they actually were able to eradicate it pretty quickly. So I figure we just dive straight into this. And for anyone who hasn't been following this situation, what exactly is the yellow-legged hornet and how did it get into Georgia in the first place?
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, the yellow-legged hornet is an invasive species that got here and came into the U.S., into Georgia through the port in Savannah. It came on a cargo ship. We suppose that it probably got here a year, maybe even 2 years, possibly even 3 years before it was found. Some of the first, when it was first identified, the nest that they believe that hornet came from was a few miles away from the port of Savannah. And based on estimated seasonal and yearly migration and spread of these nests, it could have been there. It could be in like a second generation, possibly even third generation nest. Nobody really knows for sure. There's speculation that it was first year. There's speculation it could have been third year. But what we know now, 2 years later, is the hornet has continued to spread. And it's not a huge threat to people. So it's when the Asian Giant Hornet came into the Pacific Northwest, the things were giant. People were scared to death. I mean, all these videos started circulating, people in, hazmat type bee suits, digging out these nests. This is just a small hornet. About the same size, a little bit smaller even than a European bald-faced hornet. They're distinguishable by their yellow legs, but the threat that they pose to us here in the U.S. is the fact that they are very damaging, detrimental to, can wipe out honeybee colonies in a very short amount of time because these hornets like to, well, let me back up. We've all seen yellow jackets and hornets in the fall begin to work on honeybee colonies, especially like here in the Midwest when the temperatures start to drop. Those hornets and wasps can fly at lower temperatures than honeybees, so they can start predating on these honeybee colonies, and the bees are somewhat defenseless early in the morning, later in the day when the temperatures are lower. And so backing up, this is a hornet that has come into the Southeast. They are very detrimental to honeybee colonies because they will basically hover in front of a colony and they'll just pick off worker bees coming and going into the hive, landing on the landing board, going in. And, they use honeybees and other insects in the Apis family to go back and feed their developing larvae. So it's not just like a candy treat. It's a basis of their diet. They need that protein from the bees to take back and feed to the developing larvae in these nests. And so they'll just come back to a colony. Now, the big threat that they really pose is that if you're a queen breeder, okay, and you've got mating nukes and you're betting on those virgin queens leaving the mating nukes, going out and mating with drones in a drone congregation area, and then coming back well mated, coming back to that mating nuke, coming in and starting to lay. If these yellow-legged hornets are highly populated in an area in or around queen mating yards, they could be significantly detrimental to raising queens, not counting just what they're going to do to a normal hive's population. But if you think about it, a virgin queen, when she leaves, she's going to have a much easier to recognize wing pattern. She's bigger. She's a little bit slower than workers, so she's going to be easy prey to these yellow-legged hornets that and the technique that they use when they hover outside of a bee colony is called hawking. They'll just kind of sit there like a hawk waiting for these bees to come out, and they grab them. And so a queen would be easy prey, so to speak. Or when she came back from her mating flight, as she's kind of coming in, fluttering a little bit to go inside. So not counting the damage they would do to a regular bee population in a colony, but what they could do to queen mating yards and queen mating nukes, that's going to be a significant issue that has to be looked at in the Southeast. Georgia, you've got a lot of queen breeders there. Texas, California, if these things were to get to the West Coast. And so they're just a perfect example of an invasive species getting here and getting established. And here we are trying to figure out what to do. We don't really have a plan that seems to be working. Now,
Let me add a little bit to what Tim said. Jeff Pettis and Jamie Ellis were presenting this week. I was in Florida, and Yellow-Legged Hornet was one of the topics that Dr. Pettis talked about. And the reality is, in a very short time, they have pretty well covered a lot of France and Belgium in that particular area. They are extremely invasive. Their density when they get really populated is extremely high also. And they don't only predate on European honeybees. They eat any sort of spiders, other bees, bugs, and wasps. So it's not just our bees that are going to be taking a hit here. The map that you look at is kind of interesting because I won't say they're kind of a tropical, but you're going to see, according to the maps they show, you're not going to see them much above Kentucky or Missouri, but all down through the Southeast, up through Texas and California, they expect that they will cover that range if they get fully established.
I wanted to put up a photo of what one looks like. So we had a couple people asking. So yeah, you can tell them by those yellow legs. I mean, hence the yellow-legged hornet, and then the front end of their head. Gosh, that looks scary just looking at it.
Well, Dr. Pettis was talking about some of the things. France is having a big problem with them right now. They're just everywhere. And he says a lot of the apiaries, they have tennis rackets in there. So the guys are out wiping out the hawking bees. But, basically what he says is real simple. They're very similar to a bumblebee in that you get a queen that overwinters. She makes a primary nest. After she gets a little bit bigger, she goes and lays a secondary. They make a secondary nest, which contains mostly workers. Very few queens or no queens at all laid during the summer, so they're all workers. The workers are, hitting everything. They're eating whatever they can, sugars, meats, whatever, bee bodies. And then in the fall, that same colony raises a whole bunch of queens and males to go through the overwintering process again. And all of this occurs, people don't see them a lot because they're in the tippy tops of trees. Yeah. They like to be way the heck up there in the swamp. So they're definitely
one of these nests, as Charles was saying, towards the end of the season, when you get into what's considered fall, say in the Southeast, this would be like October, late September, October, they go into their fall transition, raising a lot of drones and queens, and one nest could raise literally dozens. And they even speculate up to hundreds of queens. Now that would have to be a super nest, but an average nest can produce dozens of queens that then disperse in all directions from that nest and find a place to overwinter and then start a new nest in the spring. Now, all of those queens that disperse aren't going to survive. But if dozens, let's say 2 or 3 dozen from every nest disperse, I don't know what the percentages are, but let's just say if dozens disperse, at least a handful are going to make it through. And now it's a handful more nest in any direction from that primary nest the second year, right? And so then that just continues to exponentially grow. And that's what's happened as now they're finding, I think South Carolina has now found documented 65 nests. That was the last press release that I saw. It may be even higher now. But it's so hard to find these nests down there because where they came into the Savannah River Port and started spreading. It's a swampy region, a lot of tidal marshes and swamps and things. This isn't your yard where it's very easy to look up into one or two trees and see one of these nests forming. These are in deep, river swamps and tidal marsh swamps, thick vegetation, not a place that many people go other than maybe some hunters and fishermen and duck hunters and things. So you have to go and really be looking for these things, which takes a great amount of effort to find them. And so that's probably why they've spread like they have. And this is one of the reasons it's made it very difficult to control them, because of the marshy type terrain, swampy type terrain, which they're up in the canopy of the trees. That doesn't bother them, but it makes it very difficult for people to go in and hunt those nests, even during the fall when the foliage is off of the trees, vegetation's off the trees, and they're easier to spot. It's just a lot of ground to cover, a lot of very swampy, wet ground to cover. It's not easy.
Yeah, 100% kudos to all those people that have been hunting them and finding them. That is not an easy job. But, Tim touched on several things that are interesting there. They hit Georgia. The federal government, APHIS, identified them in 2023 and came out and said, yes, we have a problem with them, and then provided some guidance and funding. But they basically went home and turned it over to Georgia. Georgia got started in 2023, and South Carolina didn't get started at all until 2024.
and just to point out that we're talking, there's a river on one side of the river. Georgia was finding nests, and so we're literally in some spots only a couple of 100 yards on the other side of the river, and you got South Carolina. So when those first nests dispersed, we're sure they were in both places.
Yeah. The current experts don't actually feel that we're in a mode where we can be successful eliminating this. They don't even have much faith in containment at the moment. They feel like it's gotten away from us. The experts won't tell you that. The Department of Ags are still going to tell you this is a containment issue, but the people I've talked to that know Yellow-Legged Hornets say this is almost too late. So the question for me is, what are we going to do about it as beekeepers across the country? And it points out a huge flaw. And all of you watching know that we've been talking about AAA labs. But one of the problems we have in the United States right now is that we have a group called APHIS, Animal Plant Health Inspection Services, and their job is to handle this kind of stuff. And not trying to point fingers or point blame at them at all, but this is one of 500 items they have. And when it comes up, they have a little plan and they roll it out and then hopes it works. In this case, the plan was to turn it over to the Georgia Department of Ag and the South Carolina Department of Ag. And I'm not picking on those guys at all or saying that's bad. But this should have been, in my mind, an all hands on deck. Okay. And they didn't do that. They backed up, and Georgia Department of Ags said over and over, we have this under control. We're making progress. We've got it. And that's not quite been the case. Okay. This is a major issue for me. We have an invasive species that's going to affect pollinators everywhere, and over and over and over and over again in the United States, we've botched this. You can look at almost everything out there, spotter and lantern flies, all of this stuff, emerald ash borers. We have not had a good response system. And this is on display here again, once again.
Yeah, we've been seeing across all of agriculture, it seems that not just bees. I just saw there's like a new parasite in even beef that's coming around. It seems like we're just kind of getting infiltrated with different things. We don't have a good system to kind of handle it.
Are you referring to the screwworms?
No, it was just something that popped up on a news article yesterday. I think it was on the commercial group too, but it's a parasite in beef. I didn't look into it deeper, so I'm not really someone to talk a lot about it, but
the screwworm program in beef is interesting for me because obviously the screwworms were back here in the 60s. We figured out USDA did a lot of work back then to get rid of them. But what's interesting to me is that the industry, the beef industry, has been extremely active for the last 2 or 3 years to get a good screwworm program in place. We've got border inspections. They shut down beef coming across the Mexico border. I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago, maybe a year ago now. There's been a whole lot of things done. But our industry and our groups have not been pushing the same kind of issues, and we're not getting the same kind of attention. And it's kind of frustrating. Yeah. So one of the things that's going on here with the Georgia Department of Ag and South Carolina is that there are methods for killing these hornets that the Europeans are using. We're not allowed to use them. One of the basic problems, and I have to say this without trying to upset anybody, so it's not easy to come across, but the Georgia Department of Ag plays by the federal rules. The federal rules say you don't have any pesticides approved for yellow-legged hornets. Well, we don't have any pesticides approved for yellow-legged hornets because we don't technically have yellow-legged hornets. And it's this great who's on first routine while we're dying on the vine here. One of our friends, Randy Oliver, he went and talked to the French people a year and a half ago. We were talking about this. And they had a method where they tied a piece of yarn to a bee and they dip it in fipronil and it drives it back to the nest and supposedly kills the bees in it. Now, we can argue all day long about the semantics, whether that method will work, because some people think it will, some people won't. I don't know. But the reality was we couldn't even entertain it. And here less than a month ago, I was talking to one of the current lead researchers on this program. Now, when I say a lead researcher, what's happening here is the Department of Ag, when they need some technical expertise, they're going to one of these researchers. It was Dr. Keith Delaplane. It's changed to Lewis Bartlett, and I think Jamie Ellis is getting involved here just a little bit. We'll see, because he's just switched to the University of Georgia. But their hands are tied. They can only answer the questions and help with the things that are asked of them. But I was talking to one of these gentlemen the other day. He's got a potential new insecticide that would work on yellow-legged hornets, but he can't get an experimental permit from the EPA to test it. So he's actually raising funds and planning a trip to Guam to test a poison he wants to use on the yellow-legged hornets in the United States. Now, maybe I'm crazy. I'm a little wackadoodle, but to me, this is completely bizarre and unacceptable.
Yeah.
We need to be able to step in, especially when researchers know that they have a potential insecticide that could work. And when we know that these things are isolated to at least a small geographic area, there should be an easy way, sign a few documents within minutes and get this approval so that state departments of agriculture, in this case, Georgia, South Carolina, could have access to this and could work with researchers to immediately, tomorrow morning, start using this. Should have been a long time ago, but their hands are tied and they're not able to do this. And as Charles just said, they're having to go to other countries to do research because of the red tape in the way. And we've got to make some noise to let people know that this is not just, a yellow-legged hornet that's going to eat a few honeybees and mess up a few backyard beekeepers. This could start affecting the queen rearing industry, the commercial beekeeping industry. And then when it does that, then the food supply is going to be in jeopardy because of the reliance of our food industry, our agricultural industry, on the mass pollination that honeybees are able to do in different parts of the country, whether it's almonds in California, blueberries in the Northeast, apples in the Pacific Northwest and in Michigan, cranberries in Wisconsin, melons down south, and in Charles's region in Illinois, pumpkins. This is going to literally affect the variety and color and ability for people to have various foods in front of them in the grocery store, much less on the table at home. And so this is the real issue, that is what the end result is going to be. And if we continue to kick the can and say, well, this is just a yellow-legged hornet that's in a place that'll kill a few bees, that's not the case. We've got to make some noise and get the right people involved to basically remove that red tape so that researchers have access to things that they know will work and start yesterday using it.
Yeah, and Tim points out some interesting things here. But my biggest concern right now is that this is much bigger than just the yellow-legged hornet.
Oh yeah,
We're talking about Tropo labs,
Yeah.
and the guys I talk to say, heck with Tropo labs, yellow-legged hornet is here now, and we're failing. We're failing as an industry. We're failing at the state levels. There's stories of it. There's one post here. Some lady thinks she might see it in North Carolina, which would not be a big stretch whatsoever. I've heard rumors of sightings in Tennessee, whether they're unconfirmed yet, but this thing is going to move quick. Dr. Pettis says that the queens in the spring disperse as much as 15 miles. So how long does it take for a few generations to travel across, or wintering bees to get stuck in a box somewhere or on a plant that gets transferred out of that region into a nursery and anywhere. Mm-hmm. But for me, the real bigger key here is, as an industry, how do we raise awareness, get the attention we need, and be prepared, not just for more energy come spring on this yellow-legged hornet. I'd like to see 10 times the people we have working on it now working on it come spring. But Tropo laps is going to be the same issue. We don't have any sort of strong national plan, and as an industry, we have our head in the sand. There are one of the major groups out there now. There was a discussion this last weekend. They feel that APHIS has this all under control. APHIS does not have this under control. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody there. Understand that they have 5,000 things on their list that they're working on. This is just not that important to them, although it is to us.
It really surprises me because this is really big in our industry, but then even just looking at agriculture as a whole, there needs to be some sort of department that's like an emergency response department that when something like this comes into the country, they take over control and they do what they have to do.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Some sort of rapid response team for invasive species that has more manpower than it needs, not less.
Yeah. How do we do that?
I got to charge my battery, so keep talking.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Charles brings up a good point. It's, yellow-legged hornet is here, and it's been here for a few years, and it's spreading, and it's probably spread beyond what we even know and realize right now. We'll find out next spring. But it's the other things, Tropo laps, that we had a close call here recently that we know of. There may have been more cases that we don't even know of that were close calls. It may have even made it into a port we don't know of yet, but it's just one of the next things that threatens the biosecurity of North America when it comes to invasive insects and what that could do to our food supply. Ultimately, that's the end result, is what it can do to our food supply. And so we as a bee industry have to get united, have to make some noise, have to use all available avenues to spread this message about not only yellow-legged hornet that's here, but Tropo laps that's going to get here at some point. Heck, we still need more ammunition when it comes to Varroa. I mean, Varroa has been here over 35 years, and we're still fighting an uphill battle, not only as individual beekeepers and as an industry, but between our industry and the governmental agencies. It's still, we're butting heads. And there needs to be that rapid response team or that specialized division that can step in and say, hey guys, we're here to help. What resources do you need? Where can we start? What can we do? And instead, we're having to beg for that, and we don't get answers. And we're we're treading water. We're treading water, and the water's getting colder, and the current's getting stronger.
Well, to Tim's point, there's so we're not here all night. We kind of have a plan. We've been trying to get a hold of some important people. We've been making some waves in some offices and get their attention. We have their attention. They're talking to us, but their story is the same thing. Right now, they're saying, well, APHIS has this covered. Department of Ags all have their plans. Everything's hunky-dory and golden. And unfortunately, those are low-level staffers who block access to their bosses, to the people we need. So this week, we'll be coming out with, and we'll have it anywhere you can find Emily's stuff or on the Commercial Beekeepers page on Facebook. We're going to have a petition out there, and we want anybody and everybody to sign up and say, look, the petition will be basically asking for help from the federal government, from the Office of the Secretary or the USDA at a much larger scale than we're currently getting. We want to have a serious discussion about prevention programs for both the Yellow-Legged Hornet and AAA labs coming up. So, those people who want to get involved and do something, this is your chance to sign on something. Whether it goes anywhere remains to be seen.
We got to start somewhere.
Yep.
We do. So for those that aren't able to access the commercial page, is there going to be anywhere else they can sign this petition to?
You can help us with that. We're working on that.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
I hope that all the states will take a look at it and roll it out through their state associations.
Okay.
So, we're new at this. We haven't had a lot of attempts to get the whole industry involved before. So we're heading that direction. We get the groups to sign on, but we really just need the Office of the Secretary, the USDA, and APHIS, who are all out, by the way. None of them are employed at the moment. But when they come back, they need this on their desk that, 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 beekeepers signed this and said, look, we have a problem. We need your help.
Yep, definitely. I did have a question. So what did Washington do differently? Is it because of the nature of that hornet, why they were able to get rid of it versus this one?
Yeah, there's a couple things. The giant killer hornet, as you like to put it, is a little bit easier to spot. It's a ground nesting hornet, and it was a little easier to track. And of course, Washington and that area, they shut down in the winter. I think Tim would tell you that he's from that area, but one of the problems you have in Savannah, Georgia, and that particular area is that even in the wintertime, there's a lot of leaves on the trees, and there's not a lot big window here to get ahead of these things.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, the terrain, the swamps that these things are nesting high up in the trees, there could be mostly water on the swamp floor below that, or mud. Just makes it very hard to get through those areas. And like Charles said, there's a lot of trees that hold their leaves through most of what's considered winter down there. And, you don't often have really severe frost and freezes down there, especially around the coast, to have some natural degradation to some of those females, those queens that went out to hibernate. So it's easier for more of them to survive till the next spring. And so not being ground dwelling, being an upper canopy dwelling hornet, that makes it harder. The terrain where they came ashore and where they're spreading in makes it harder. And the fact that there's not any severe weather in terms of winter weather to potentially slow them down.
Yeah. And I'm sure Tim would agree. We don't want to try to throw any shade on any of those people who have already been working hard on this.
No, there's been a lot of people who put a lot of time and effort into it.
Yeah. Well, we just think that they're completely understaffed and working with handcuffs. And we find that unfortunate. We want them to get every single thing they need. I saw the other day there's a hornet trap that looks like a giant minnow trap that they're using in Asia. There should be 30,000 of them on the way, as far as I'm concerned. Everything you could possibly want, throw it at it. And if you wasted a little money and a little time and you don't use it, so what? It's not a big deal.
So is there realistically, what would you guys think a good eradication plan be for a hornet like this?
Flamethrowers and nuclear waste.
Like, is there a possibility we could eventually just get rid of it completely, or do you think it's in there pretty thick?
You hate to be a naysayer. You like to say you could probably do it. You know, when I first looked at it, Tim told me where the island was, and I looked at it on the map. And had it been me, I would have taken every bit of malathion I could think of, and we'd kill every bug in a 10 square mile area and let them move back in. But they didn't put me in charge, so that's not my call. Looking at the map now where they are in Georgia, for those of you who don't know, you can go on the Georgia Department of Ag. There is a free newsletter where they will send to you. They've been sending them out. I think they're on like newsletter number 38, where they do a pretty good job of mapping them and telling you what's going on. You just enter your email address. It's not a big deal, but it's discouraging to look at.
Yeah. And, you know, I personally think that one of the next steps in identifying, locating, and potentially eradicating the nest because of where they're located would be using drones, some sort of thermal drone, some sort of drone that was programmed to recognize pheromones or some heat signature. Now, you know, you may get a lot of false positives with squirrel nests and things like that, but it's a place to start rather than saying, oh, that wouldn't work. Well, what's working now? Boots on the ground is very limited down there. And so we've got to be doing something else that is attacking this problem from different angles. And that's one of the thoughts that has been thrown out there and could be used.
And I think, this is just me and it's my opinion, but I think anything that will kill a hornet, any baited traps, even kills the bald-faced hornets and the paper hornets in that particular region, kill them all. Okay.
Yeah.
You hate to say that, and you don't really want to kill a whole lot of them, but the future of those same bugs all over the state, all over a dozen other states is in jeopardy here. So if there's a 10, 15 square mile area where we have to kill every paper wasp, kill them. They'll move back in a couple of years, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Sometimes a little bit of collateral damage in a case like this is going to be preventative and necessary to basically prevent an epidemic from occurring.
But current EPA rules say no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the situation is not really being taken seriously.
It's a chain of events, because the reality is you want to have rules and guide rails in place to keep people from doing anything and everything. But then you also have to recognize in today's world, there's different situations that pop up, and we're just not prepared to handle this rapidly. That's our own fault.
No.
Yeah. There was another bug down in the south that did a lot of damage years and years ago. There was a pretty good eradication program. It was the boll weevil eradication program in terms of what it was doing to cotton. And so, you know, we might be able to garner some lessons from looking back at that history.
Yeah. There are plenty of successes out there, and there's also a whole lot of failures. And the key for me is that we take a serious look at this. We garner as many resources as possible, and we try to take those successes and win, because the cost here is much bigger than most people want to recognize. Our natural pollinators alone are going to take a huge hit, not just honeybees.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. You know, I really wonder if we could partner with others in ag just to even, I mean, like I said, get more awareness as a whole for the entire United States. Because, like I said, this is more than just the beekeeping industry problem. This is everything. So
it is, and hopefully your audience will reach out to their friends, and this goes viral, and we get a whole lot of support. You know.
Yep, definitely.
I think it's just one of those things as a country we've got to get better at it. If you look at COVID, you know, we did a horrible job of COVID. You look at emerald ash borer, you look at the spotted lanternfly. Several of these things are good examples of complete and utter failures. So let's look at them and let's not do those again. And then, as to Tim's point, the screwworm, the boll weevil, those are things that we did pretty good at. So we can look at those and try to do something differently there too.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to add to the conversation?
Go ahead, Tim. You finished out.
Well, I think we've kind of covered it. I mean, it's primarily is making people aware of this issue, that this isn't an oncoming threat. This is an existing threat that's spreading, but it's chapter 1 of that book on other threats that are right behind it. And this has gotten our attention. Varroa was number 1. Trachea mites, Varroa mites, now yellow-legged hornets, tropalaelaps, all these things that we have to stay ahead of. We can't keep waiting until they get here and then trying to chase them down. Doesn't work. We've got to be able to guard ourselves head on and get a little bit on the offensive versus just playing defense. We're going to have to use a little offense. And like Charles was saying, that might create a little bit of collateral damage, but there's still a geographic area that these things are pretty much limited to. We could take some steps to stop them in their tracks. There may be some isolated jumps already out of those areas that are known, but we could deal with those then. But we could deal with the area where we know they're at and hit them hard. There will be some collateral damage, but it would be a way to ensure that we can make it a level playing field. Right now, it's not a level playing field. We're playing catch up. We're playing from behind, and we're trying to just play defense. We're trying to keep them from scoring again, and we're already down, 41 points in the fourth quarter.
Where's our
We're using our third string quarterback with no timeouts.
And Emily, you've been kind enough to let us talk about tropalaelaps earlier this year. And I know there's some people out there say that was a near miss and, everything's under control and everything's hunky-dory. But, guys, there's some alarm bells going off here. Tropalaelaps was on our back door. They were 5 days away from being in the country. It's probably not the first time, probably not the last time. And at the same time, we have the yellow-legged hornet who's already here, showing us that we are ill-prepared to handle any sort of event like this. We really, as an industry and as a nation, we've got to get our ass moving to prevent these problems from spreading nationwide, because they are going to be major problems. Everybody watching this knows how tight the beekeeping industry is right now. Varroa has kicked our butts. 45, 50% losses. If you add a couple more pests to that, we're up in that 60, 70% range, and unsustainable is definitely going to hit us.
Yep, I definitely agree. All right, well, let me know when the petition is out. I will definitely post that so everybody can sign it. And
I have the draft. I got to run spell check.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
All right.
All right, well, thanks for joining, everybody.
Thanks.
See you guys in the next one.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Good night.